"You're under arrest for financial fraud." That's what the officer said on my 65th birthday, right there in my dining room, in front of my grandchildren, my neighbors, my friends, right in front of the cake Emily had made with Queen Mom in gold lettering. I barely heard the rest. I just remember the clicking sound of the handcuffs behind my back and the sting of cold metal against my wrists. My guests went silent. My youngest granddaughter dropped her juice box. I could feel all their eyes on me, the pity, the curiosity, the quiet thrill of witnessing a scandal. And Emily, standing by the fireplace like a statue in heels, her arms crossed, her head tilted just slightly. I waited for her to speak, to ask what was happening, to defend me. She didn't. Instead, she sipped her champagne and smiled. It wasn't wide or obvious, just a slight, satisfied curl of her lip. She had rehearsed this. She wanted it to look like surprise, but I know my daughter. That smile, that was victory. The officers walked me through my own home like I was nothing. Past the birthday banners, the carefully wrapped gifts, the silver buffet trays. I couldn't even feel my legs. I just kept walking because I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My blouse was wrinkled, my lipstick smudged, my hands locked tight behind me. I looked like a woman who had lost control. But inside, somewhere deep, quiet, and steady, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Not panic, not fear. Rage. Out on the lawn, camera phones flashed. Some neighbor called out my name. The cuffs bit into my skin with every step. And through the police car window, as they shut the door on me like I was trash, I looked back one last time. Emily raised her glass, tapped it against her husband's. That smug little nod, that performance of polite concern. It was all theater. This wasn't justice. This was an ambush. She didn't just plan to humiliate me. She celebrated it. My daughter. My own flesh and blood. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd built my life on surviving men worse than her. That smile would be the last one she wore without consequence. The night before I was arrested, Emily hugged me goodnight like nothing was wrong. Her arms around me, her perfume too sweet, her betrayal already in motion. It had started weeks earlier with her being unusually kind. She stopped complaining about my old-fashioned habits. She asked about my blood pressure, brought me tea without rolling her eyes. She even called me Mama again, something she hadn't done in years. "You need to relax more," she said one night while fluffing pillows on the guest room bed. "Just enjoy your birthday. Let us take care of everything." I took it as healing. I thought maybe we'd turned a corner. After all the tension, the comments about my slowing down, the fights over the company finances, maybe she was finally softening. Maybe, I told myself, she just missed her father. We all did. Now I know what she really missed. Access. Emily insisted on hosting the party at my house, even though I offered to keep it simple. "You only turn 65 once," she chirped. "Let's do it right." She planned the menu, sent out the invitations, even hired a jazz trio for the backyard. It wasn't kindness. It was camouflage. She needed me surrounded, off guard, relaxed and unaware. The day before the party, she walked into my study, a room she rarely entered, and asked me for help locating an old file. She said it was something sentimental from Dad's estate. I watched her pretend to search. Rifling through the cabinet drawers, I kept perfectly organized. She knew exactly what she was looking for. The next morning, I caught her in there again, early, before coffee. She smiled like a child caught sneaking cookies and said, "Just needed Scotch tape?" I nodded. I didn't ask questions, because I was still the fool who believed my daughter loved me. Looking back, the signs were all there. The sudden sweetness, the hovering, the forced intimacy. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted evidence, or the appearance of it. Just enough crumbs to hand over to someone who could twist them into something damning. But the worst part wasn't her manipulation. It was how much I wanted it to be real. How desperately I'd wanted my daughter back. The girl I'd raised alone. The one who used to braid my hair and crawl into bed when she had nightmares. I ignored my instincts for a scrap of warmth, and she set the stage for my public destruction. On the day I was supposed to be celebrated, The setup wasn't sudden. It was just the final blow in a pattern I had ignored for years until it crushed me. Emily had been disrespecting me for a long time. Not with screaming or slamming doors. She was too polished for that. Her cruelty came dressed as cleverness. A smirk, a joke at my expense, a comment just quiet enough that the room could laugh without feeling guilty. "She's still doing the books herself. Can you believe that?" she once told her friends over wine. I keep saying, "Mom, it's the digital age. You don't have to balance a checkbook with a candle anymore." They laughed. I smiled, pretended it didn't sting, pretended it was just humor and not what it was. A daughter making her mother feel small. It didn't stop there. Whenever we discussed the company, my company, the one I helped build with her father from a single file cabinet and a rusted coffee maker, she treated my opinions like they were sweet but outdated. "Mom, you're amazing, but you don't really get high-risk investments," she'd say. "Leave that stuff to people with faster reflexes." Translation: "You're old, stay out of the way." But the real blow came one Christmas Eve, wine in her hand, lights twinkling on the tree. She leaned in, drunk but deliberate. "You know, eventually it's all mine anyway," she whispered. "Might as well start preparing for it." I should have stopped right then, taken her out of the will, changed the locks, told her that if she wanted to play queen, she'd have to do it in someone else's castle. But I didn't. I made excuses. "She's just stressed. She's grieving her father. She doesn't mean it." But the truth was simpler and uglier. She did mean it. She'd been circling for years, measuring the walls, eyeing the silver, learning where I was vulnerable. And I kept the door wide open, let her borrow against my trust. Let her access accounts just for emergencies. I even named her temporary treasurer of the foundation board during my gallbladder surgery. I let her close. I let her see how everything worked, because I loved her, because I wanted to believe she still loved me back. But Emily didn't want love. She wanted power, and she was patient enough to wait until I was too distracted by birthdays and grief to see her strike. The biggest mistake Emily made wasn't underestimating my age. It was forgetting who raised her and what I'd survived to get here. For years, I let her think I was just Mom, the soft one, the sentimental one, the woman who kept Christmas ornaments organized by year and cried during long-distance commercials. But before I was Mom, I was CEO. When her father got sick and couldn't run the company anymore, I stepped in without blinking, took meetings with bankers who wouldn't look me in the eye, negotiated contracts while signing hospice papers, balanced grief with payroll, built client trust with handshakes and deadlines met down to the hour. In 10 years, I doubled our assets from $11 million to $22.30. I was the woman who sat across from lawyers and CPAs, twice my size, and never flinched. The woman who hired, fired, reinvested, forecasted downturns, and kept everything running when the market nosedived and everyone else was crying over coffee. But Emily never saw that. Or rather, she didn't want to. She saw a woman in her 60s with arthritis in her hands and crow's feet at her eyes. She saw me baking pies, clipping coupons, sewing buttons back onto her kids, coats. She saw safety, predictability, weakness. That's what made her bold. She thought I was winding down. She thought my power had expired quietly, along with the man who built the company beside me. But what she didn't know was this. He built it with me, and I kept it alive. I never stopped working. I just changed offices, from boardrooms to kitchens, from strategy meetings to estate planning appointments. And I kept records. Every tax year, every asset, every donation made under the foundation's name, every board vote, every agreement signed in ink and notarized. Emily thought I was just a signature, a name on paper, a door she could push open with the right sob story and a forged spreadsheet. But the truth? I was the lock she didn't have the key for. I met Rosa on my second night in prison, when I couldn't sleep and my thoughts wouldn't shut up. She slid half a Snickers under my bunk and said, "You look like you used to be somebody." I didn't answer, because I still was somebody, even if the guards called me inmate 40,793. Even if my cellmate snored and the mattress felt like cardboard wrapped in regret. even if my daughter's lies had stripped me down to the ugliest version of myself, accused, shamed, forgotten. I took the Snickers. "Name's Rosa," she said. "White collar. 8 years left." She looked maybe mid-50s, smart eyes, hands that moved like they were used to holding contracts, not bars. She watched me carefully, not with pity, but curiosity. "You're not like the others," she said the next day in the yard. "You don't have that look yet." "What look?" "The one where you've stopped believing there's a way out." I liked her immediately. Over the next few weeks, I learned Rosa had once been a paralegal at a major law firm, until she helped her boss cover up a client's offshore tax fraud and got caught holding the bag. "I knew where the bones were buried," she shrugged. "Now I know how to dig them up." We weren't supposed to talk about our cases, but one afternoon, after a particularly rough hearing where the judge denied my bail extension, I cracked. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. No gasps, no judgment, just a steady stare and the occasional nod. When I got to the part about the bank transfers, the ones Emily claimed I'd authorized, Rosa sat up straighter. "Let me guess, the signatures look just enough like yours to fool a stranger, but not enough to fool you?" I blinked. "Exactly." Rosa grinned. "Sweetheart, your daughter's clever, but she's not good. Forgery has tells, pressure points, loops too perfect, dates that don't align with known patterns. Show me the records." I stared at her. How would I even get them? "Paperwork runs this place. Request a legal packet. I'll help you fill it out. Inmates have the right to access discovery materials. Use it." Something shifted inside me then. The grief was still there, the betrayal still raw. But now I had a partner. Not in blood, in war. Emily thought she'd buried me with false accusations and a fancy lawyer. But Rosa handed me a weapon and taught me how to sharpen it. The moment Rosa handed me that first batch of documents, something inside me clicked into place. I stopped feeling like a victim. I started feeling like a threat. It wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about taking everything back. Not just my money, not just my house, not just my name, my power. Rosa and I worked every night. She taught me how to dissect the prosecution's documents, highlight inconsistencies, flag timelines that didn't line up. I started asking for printouts of my own bank records, filing requests, following the paper trail Emily thought I'd never see. She thought prison meant silence. But prison taught me how to listen. And once I started listening, I heard everything. The little cracks in her story, the sloppy details she overlooked, the arrogance in her paperwork, assuming no one would ever bother to double check. So I set my goal, and I said it out loud one night under the buzz of the fluorescent lights. "I'm going to prove she lied. I'm going to take back what's mine. And I'm going to face her in court, not from behind bars." Rosa didn't blink. She just nodded. "Then we'd better work faster." That was the shift. No more tears on my pillow. No more praying for someone to rescue me. I wasn't waiting to be saved. I was preparing for war. One day I received the envelope. It was unmarked. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in thick pen. Inside was a single torn piece of newspaper, and it nearly took the breath out of my chest. There, on the faded print, was a photo of my front porch. My porch. The one with the wrought iron railing my husband had welded himself in, 91. The same porch where Emily had begged me to take a photo with the grandkids every Christmas. The caption read, "Local philanthropist Emily Carroll expands estate sale to benefit Family Foundation." Estate sale. Not donation, not preservation. Sale. In the photo, a gilded mirror leaned against the brick, a brass floor lamp beside it. Both had belonged to my mother. My mother, who had survived the Depression with dignity and left me those pieces as reminders of where we came from. And now they were propped up on the lawn like garage sale junk. Rosa peeked over my shoulder. "That your place?" I nodded slowly, bile rising in my throat. "She's selling it off," I whispered, "piece by piece." "She doesn't waste time," Rosa muttered. "How long you been inside now?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That's all it took for Emily to move in, take over, and start liquidating everything I'd built. She didn't even wait for a conviction, just my absence. The anger came slow at first, like warming your hand over a stovetop. Then it flared. I went back to my bunk and wrote 2 letters that night. One to my lawyer, requesting updates on property ownership, foundation account access, and whether Emily had obtained power of attorney without my knowledge. The other? To an old friend from my board days, a man who owed me a favor and happened to be a retired real estate appraiser. If Emily wanted to play queen, fine, let her sit on my throne. But I'd built the walls, I laid the bricks, and I knew exactly where the cracks would show once pressure was applied. She thought I was out of the picture. She didn't realize I was writing my return from a prison bunk, and when I walked back into that house, it would not be through the front door. Emily thought I'd spend my time in prison crying. I spent it learning how to read like a lawyer and how to strike like one too. The request Rosa helped me file finally came through. A thick folder of case evidence, delivered by a disinterested guard with chipped nail polish and a clipboard. He tossed it on my bunk like it was junk mail, but when I opened it, I saw the first thread. 4 forged bank transfers, each one supposedly authorized by me. Each dated within a week of my gallbladder surgery last year, when I could barely hold a fork, let alone sign anything. At first glance, the signatures looked like mine. They even used the right pen, a burgundy fine point I kept in the kitchen drawer. But Rosa leaned in, narrowed her eyes and said, "Look here." She pointed to the loop in the Y on my last name. "Too clean," she said, "and the baseline dips. That's tension. Nervous tension. Someone trying too hard to copy a flow they don't actually have." I stared at the page. She was right. My signature always had a slight tilt, a confident slope that came from decades of writing under pressure, signing contracts, grant letters, employee checks. My hand knew what I was doing. Whoever forged these, they didn't. The dates were another red flag. All 4 transfers took place at 8:03 a.m. sharp on different days. Same time, same amount, transferred to a trust Emily claimed was for medical expense management. It didn't exist. My real trust, the one her father and I had built, was untouched. The money she used was funneled from a shell account she set up in my name, then funneled again into hers. And she left a trail so arrogant, so sloppy, it was like she assumed no one would ever bother to look. But I was looking. With Rosa's help, we built a timeline, highlighted inconsistencies, compiled questions for my lawyer and for the court. Because now, I had more than just suspicion. I had evidence. Emily called me mentally incompetent in public filings, but in these forged documents, I was somehow competent enough to make 4 precise transfers while doped up on post-op morphine. That was her mistake. She wanted to paint me as confused, but her forgeries proved I was sharp, too sharp to have signed off on her lies. And when I got out, I'd use her own paperwork to bury her. The first time I saw Emily's face on television, I nearly laughed. The second time, I understood I was watching my own public execution. It was a Friday night. I was in the rec room, folding a puzzle back into its box, when someone flipped the channel from a game show to the evening news. And there she was, Emily, hair curled into perfect, soft waves, minimal makeup, a navy blouse that made her look smart, serious, maternal. She had mastered the performance, calm concern, trembling voice, occasional glances off camera like she was holding back tears. My mother was a brilliant woman, she told the reporter, her voice steady, but watching her mental health decline has been the hardest experience of my life. I dropped the puzzle lid. Rosa turned to look at me. Emily continued, "I did everything I could. I moved her into my home. I tried to get her the care she needed. But the truth is, she became volatile. She emptied accounts. She lashed out. You had to report her?" Emily paused, bit her lip, just the right amount of hesitation. I had no choice. I didn't want her to end up on the street or hurt someone. I loved her. I still do. I felt my throat close. The heat rose from my chest to my ears. This was a media war, and I hadn't even stepped onto the battlefield yet. She was painting herself as the victim, and me as the broken woman who had finally cracked under the weight of age and paranoia. The reporter leaned forward. "You've moved into your mother's home now, correct?" Emily gave the softest, most calculated nod I've ever seen. "Just to protect what's left of the estate," she said. "It's what she would have wanted if she were herself." The screen cut to images of our home, the garden I built, the hallway I painted with my own hands, the kitchen table where I taught her how to write her name. And now she was calling me dangerous, irresponsible, unfit. Rosa muted the TV and leaned over. "That snake is playing chess with your life." "No," I said quietly, my hands fists in my lap. "She's playing theater, I'm playing war. Because here's the thing. You can lie to the world for only so long before the curtain falls. And when it does, she'll wish she'd stayed off the stage altogether." My lawyer came to see me on a rainy Thursday. He didn't sit down right away. That's when I knew the news wasn't just bad, it was personal. He closed the door behind him and pulled a thick folder from his briefcase. Didn't speak, didn't smile, just placed it on the table between us like it might explode. "You need to prepare yourself," he said. "I've been in prison for 62 days, I replied. I think I'm past the stage of gentle shocks. But I wasn't. He opened the file. Bank statements, email transcripts, court expense reports. "Your daughter," he said carefully, "has not just been misusing your funds. She's been using your assets to finance her case against you." I blinked. "She what?" He pointed to a series of payments. Retainer fees to a high-profile white-collar criminal defense team. Not mine, hers. Thousands withdrawn from my investment portfolio, now under her temporary guardianship. Even larger sums traced to a family litigation fund she created under my name to protect the estate from elder mismanagement. She was draining my own accounts to destroy me. "She's paying her legal team with your money," he said, not hiding his fury now. "And she's using shell companies to bill the estate for things like security monitoring, in-home medical care, and—" He stopped, flipped one more page. "A full renovation of your home office, claimed it was, no longer suitable for an impaired adult." I leaned back in my plastic chair. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed louder. My hands were cold. "She's not just trying to take what's mine," I said, staring straight ahead. "She wants to make sure I never come back for it." He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. This wasn't about greed anymore. It was about erasure. Emily wanted to rewrite the ending of my story. Brand me incapable, unfit, unstable, until all that was left of me was a signature on a few legal forms she could drag into a courtroom. She wanted me gone, quietly, permanently. "She's weaponized your name," he said. "No," I whispered. "She's weaponized my love." And that's when the last of the grief cracked. I had raised Emily alone, changed her diapers, nursed her through the chicken pox, paid for her braces, her college, her first apartment. I gave her everything. And she used it all to build the sword that would stab me through the chest. That night, I curled up on my prison bunk, knees to chest like a child, and let myself grieve my daughter like the dead. Not the daughter the world thought they saw, the smiling philanthropist on TV, the one throwing estate sales and giving interviews with her hand on her heart. I grieved the daughter I raised, the one who used to braid my hair on Sunday mornings, the one who left notes in my lunch bag in high school. "Good luck today, Mama." Gone. She was gone. Emily died the moment she decided to use my love as currency. And I cried like I was burying her. Because in a way, I was. I cried for every bedtime story, every sandwich packed, every check written when she just needed help this month. I cried for the girl who used to sleep with her head on my lap and ask me if I believed people could stay good forever. And I cried for myself, for believing too long, for staying too soft, for thinking that silence and sacrifice were love. Rosa didn't say anything when she found me like that, knees tucked in, blanket pulled over my head, hands clenched like claws. She just sat on the edge of the bed and placed one warm hand over my ankle. That one small weight brought me back. When I finally spoke, it wasn't a sob. It wasn't a question. It was a vow. I'm going to end this. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. For every woman who had been made to feel crazy for remembering the truth. For every mother left behind by the child she raised. For every whisper of, maybe she imagined it. While the world handed the microphone to the betrayer, Rosa nodded like she'd been waiting for me to reach this place. "You're not the first," she said softly. "But you could be the loudest. And I would be, because grief had run its course. There were no more tears in me, only strategy, only silence sharpened into action, only the hum of war drums no one else could hear yet. Emily thought I'd rot quietly behind bars, but I was already writing my return. In fire, in filings, and in her own damned handwriting. They sentenced me to 10 years. I served 6. I didn't leave because they forgave me. I left because the truth finally burned its way to the surface. Rosa was the first to know. She hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "Knew it," she whispered. "Knew your name wouldn't rot in their system forever." We sat together on my last night, our knees almost touching on that creaky bunk. 14 months left for me, she said with a shrug. "But don't wait. Burn the house down without me." I promised I would. The judge had read the new evidence twice. Forged signatures, false accounts, the accountant with a disbarred license, and a record longer than his resume. My lawyer called it a legal reversal. The media called it a scandal. I called it survival. So when I walked out through that prison gate, I didn't feel free. I felt aimed. My lawyer was waiting, suit rumpled, tie loose. But in his hands, he held the weight of what we'd built. A folder thick, with everything Emily thought she'd buried. "We're ready," he said. Emily thought I'd crawl out of prison broken, ashamed, too weak to fight back, too grateful just to breathe air that didn't smell like metal and ammonia. She forgot who taught her how to fight. I didn't need a parade. I didn't need the press. I needed a court date, and I had one, because while I was inside, she'd gone bold. She'd announced a gala, a public event, the Dorothy Carroll Legacy Fund, my name on a stage one hadn't agreed to, surrounded by donors who thought they were helping an aging woman with declining faculties preserve her life's work. She'd even booked a string quartet. We let her. We let her spend, let her brag, let her climb higher into the illusion. Then we filed the motion. Motion to vacate conviction. Motion to reclaim assets. Motion to prosecute for fraud. It hit the court docket 3 days before the gala. The headline ran before she could call her stylist. New evidence in Carroll case triggers financial investigation. She called my lawyer in a frenzy. "She's supposed to be gone," she screamed. "She's not supposed to come back." But I was coming back. Not with apologies, not with excuses, with documentation, with witnesses, with rage sharpened by 6 years of silence. And I was coming back in the same navy blue suit she once mocked, said it made me look too serious for a party. She was right. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to end it. The trap was set. The courtroom smelled like old wood, cheap cologne, and fear. Hers, not mine. Emily arrived early, strutting like she was late on purpose. High heels, designer blazer, hair freshly blown out. She clutched her lawyer's arm like a trophy. The cameras outside had followed her right through the front steps. She was still playing the role, America's wronged daughter. But the moment I stepped inside, something in her changed. Her jaw tightened, her smile stuttered. Because I wasn't what she expected. No jumpsuit, no guards, no handcuffs. Just me, in the navy blue suit she once sneered at, hair pinned back tight, documents in one hand, silence in the other. She blinked. Twice. That was the first time I saw fear in her. Not panic. Not yet. Just confusion. Like the play had started, and someone handed her a script she'd never seen before. I walked past her without stopping. Didn't look at her. Didn't flinch. Just found my seat beside my lawyer and placed the evidence binder gently on the desk. It landed with a soft thud, but Emily jumped like it was a gunshot. Her lawyer leaned down and whispered something. She didn't respond, because in that moment, she realized I hadn't come for a compromise. I had come for the truth. The judge entered. The bailiff called the room to order. My name, my real name, echoed through the chamber, not as a defendant this time, but as a plaintiff. 6 years ago, they locked me in a cell like I was dangerous. Today, I stood in front of the same court system, and demanded it look me in the eye. I could feel the weight of the eyes behind me. Reporters, former donors, a few board members Emily thought she still had in her pocket. One of them, Diane, my old secretary from 20 years back, caught my eye. She nodded once, slow and solid, like she'd been waiting for this. So had I. The judge asked if I was ready to present. I didn't even glance at Emily. I opened the binder, flipped to the first tab, and said clearly, "Yes, Your Honor. Let's begin with the forged mortgage." And just like that, the silence was broken, not with noise, but with power. Emily's performance was over. Now it was my turn to speak. We started with the signatures. 4 financial transfers, each dated during my recovery from surgery. My lawyer held up side-by-side comparisons, my real signature versus Emily's imitations. He circled the loop in my why, the trembling baseline, the inconsistent pressure, the missing notary stamp. Then the courtroom projector lit up with a screen grab, a time-stamped text from Emily to the disbarred accountant. "Make sure the transfers look shaky. She's old. It needs to look believable." Gasps rippled across the room. Someone dropped a pen behind me. Emily shifted in her seat, fingers tight around her armrest. Her lawyer whispered something urgent, but she just stared straight ahead. We weren't done. Next came the bank records. Transfers from my trust into a company called D. Carroll Senior Services, Inc., a company I never created, never approved, never heard of until I was behind bars. She paid herself to care for the woman she locked in prison, my lawyer said, letting the words hang. Then came the private auction receipts. A gold heirloom necklace, a hand-carved armoire from my grandmother's attic, a first-edition book signed by my late husband. Each sold, each item linked to Emily's signature, some still bearing happy birthday post-it notes on the auction photos, my handwriting still attached like a ghost. Emily looked down. Finally, the judge didn't. "Is there more?" he asked. "Yes, Your Honor." My lawyer flipped to the final tab. The trust clause, the one Emily never knew existed, the one that stated in unambiguous legal language that any attempt to access, redirect, or leverage trust funds without written board approval would result in permanent forfeiture of all rights to the estate. Signed by me, notarized, witnessed, filed years before she even thought to play the loving daughter. The courtroom was silent, except for me. I exhaled. Not relief, release. Everything she'd used to destroy me was now evidence. Every lie, every forged form, every smug, televised insult. All of it laid bare. And I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to beg. I just let her speak, through the trail she left behind. Because the thing about paper trails is, you don't need to chase them. You just have to shine a light. The judge leaned forward, read from the final page, and said the words I had waited 6 years and 4 months to hear. The court finds that the defendant, Emily Carroll, did knowingly forge financial documents, commit fraud, and misappropriate funds with intent to deceive. The trust clause is valid and enforceable. You are hereby removed from all rights and access to the Carroll estate, effective immediately. Then came the last blow. You are also under criminal investigation for elder abuse and theft. The gavel slammed. 3 beats of silence. Then Emily collapsed. She didn't faint. She didn't scream. She dropped to her knees, slowly, as if the air had been ripped out of the room and she was trying to catch it from the floor. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her hands trembled, reaching toward the table, then toward me. And then the voice. That same little girl voice she used when she scraped her knees in the driveway. "Mom, please, don't let them do this to me. Forgive me, just this once." I didn't move. She kept pleading, her sobs no longer delicate or camera-ready. "I didn't mean to go this far. I thought you were fading. I thought you were done. I wanted to protect what we had. Please, Mama. I didn't think they'd believe you." That part broke something in me, but not in the way she wanted. They didn't believe me at first. But I made them. With evidence, with discipline, with cold, hard facts. I looked down at her, not as my daughter, not anymore, but as a woman who gambled everything and lost. "I begged you for love once," I said calmly. You gave me prison. Now you'll face yours." The bailiff moved toward her, slow but firm. Emily sobbed harder, tried to crawl forward, but the judge barked her name like a command, and she froze. I stood there and watched it all. Her face, her fall, her frantic glances toward a lawyer who'd already stepped away like he didn't know her. It was over, not with a hug, not with an apology, but with a verdict. She came for my money. She thought I'd die quietly in the dark. But I walked back into the light and watched her beg in front of the very people she tried to charm, and I didn't look away. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Phones buzzed in pockets. Pens scratched against notepads. Reporters leaned forward like they'd been waiting their whole careers for this exact kind of fall. Emily was still on her knees when the cameras caught her. That same daughter who once sneered at my slow walking, who mocked my voice behind my back, who told her friends, "Mom's best days ended with Dad's funeral," was now sobbing into her manicured hands, broken, mascara streaked, shaking like a leaf in a hurricane she built herself. She reached for the table, for something solid. There was nothing there. Not her lawyer, not her board members, not even the aides she used to snap her fingers at. Because suddenly, no one wanted to be seen with her. Even her husband, the one who toasted to her leadership with champagne in my living room, stood stiff against the back wall, eyes wide, arms folded, frozen in fear or shame or both. The press outside got the headline within minutes. Emily Carroll convicted of fraud, mother exonerated after 6 years of wrongful imprisonment. Inside, she kept whispering, "Mom, please," like repetition might undo a decade. But I didn't say another word. She already had my answer. The court clerk passed me a document, official recognition of full reinstatement. My estate, my foundation, my company, my name, all mine again. No apologies required, no tears accepted. When I turned to leave, reporters swarmed, flashes burst like fireworks. One shouted, "Miss Carroll, any comment on today's verdict?" I paused at the courtroom door, turned just enough for my voice to carry, and said, "This was never about revenge. It was about return." Then I walked out. Outside, the wind hit me like a baptism. Clean, honest, cold. A woman in the crowd touched my arm and said quietly, "I always knew something was off about her." Another just said, "Welcome home." But I didn't answer, because the moment I stepped onto those courthouse steps, I realized something deeper than victory had occurred. Emily had stolen everything she could, except who I was, and now the world saw her not as a victim, not as a visionary, not even as my daughter, but as what she truly became, a woman who mistook inheritance for entitlement and love for leverage. And me? I didn't rise from the ashes. I walked out of them, still on fire. The moment the bailiff touched her shoulder, Emily's spine finally broke, not with violence, but with the quiet collapse of someone who thought they were untouchable. She didn't fight, didn't scream. She just slumped, like her body had given up, pretending it could carry the weight of her lies. The courtroom watched, silent, as she was let out. The same woman who once staged my arrest in front of my grandchildren, now walking the same path I had 6 years earlier. Only this time, there was no party, no champagne, just handcuffs. The judge had been swift, sentenced for fraud, sentenced for theft, sentenced for elder abuse. 10 years, no early release recommendation. I sat still. No tears, no joy, just a strange, hollow ache. Not for her, but for the ghost of the daughter I'd once held to my chest, who used to run barefoot through the hallway, laughing. That girl didn't exist anymore. The woman in cuffs had strangled her. Emily's supporters, what was left of them, didn't wait around. I watched them scatter like leaves in wind. No one held the door. No one called out. Even her lawyer packed his briefcase with the kind of urgency only shame can buy. Her husband, he never made it to her side. He stood up, rubbed his temples, and walked out the opposite door like he didn't even know her name. And maybe he didn't. Maybe no one really knew her, not like I did. I watched her become what she became, step by calculated step, from the eye rolls to the sly jokes, from the forged papers to the television interviews. She wanted the world to see me as unstable. Now the world saw her as criminal. She once told me, "Soon, all of this will be mine anyway." Now, none of it would ever be. The court froze her access to all assets. Every dime she stole, every item she sold, every account she drained, all documented, all seized. Even the home she squatted in, my home, was ordered returned to me within the month. The irony? She destroyed her life trying to take mine. And I rebuilt mine by refusing to become like her. The bailiff pulled open the side door. Emily turned her head for one last look. Not at me. At the exit she'd never walk through again. And I sat there, unmoved, watching her go. The way you watch a storm pass through the town it once thought it owned. I didn't throw a party. I didn't pop champagne. I went home, washed the courtroom smell out of my hair, and sat at my kitchen table in silence, the same one she tried to sell. It was still there, somehow. Worn edges, a scratch from when Emily dropped a mug in 1997, a faint marker stain from my grandson's art phase. I ran my fingers across it, not to remember her, but to remember me, the woman who once sat at this table building a business, filling out grant applications, filing taxes with one hand and packing lunches with the other. They tried to make me small, but I had always been big, just quiet about it. The next week, I reassembled the board, fired 3 people who let Emily dick her claws in, hired 2 women who had been through what I had, one discredited by her own son, the other evicted by her daughter after a diagnosis. We didn't swap sob stories. We made policy. And then I filed the paperwork. The Phoenix Foundation, a legal fund and mentorship network for women wrongfully imprisoned, especially by family, especially by the people they once trusted most. The first office opened 5 months later, 2 towns over. The plaque on the front door read, "From the ashes, we rise. Unbroken, unbought, unafraid." People ask me if I'd ever forgive Emily. That question doesn't make me angry anymore. It just makes me tired. Forgiveness is a soft word. And this, what she did, it was surgical. It was calculated. You don't forgive a wolf for following its nature. You just stop inviting it into your home. I think about her sometimes, not as a daughter, but as a warning. A case study in unchecked entitlement, in what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. The last image I carry of her isn't from childhood. It's not her smile on a swing or her graduation gown. It's her on her knees, in front of a judge, begging, and me standing above her, not with hate, but with clarity. That was the real end, not prison, power, mine, reclaimed, protected, and never again given without question. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the story, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far it travels. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out my other videos.